All right, let's go ahead and let's play about a 30-second clip from Scott Frost's UCF press conference this week.
Yeah, Terry's been great. I'm so grateful to have an AD that's on my side and working alongside me. When you're in the other situation, it's really difficult, and it's really debilitating, to be honest with you, when you feel like you're working and you don't have somebody right there alongside with you. Terry and I are on the same page. He's trying to give us everything that he can to be successful, and it's a good partnership, and I'm grateful to him.
So Terry is the UCF AD. What are your thoughts on this bull crap, Jake?
Yeah, it's interesting. You always wonder about the relationship you have with a guy like Trev Alberts, who didn't hire you, right? Bill Moose hired Scott Frost. Trev Alberts comes in. But it's just funny to hear that, because I've long held the belief, and I said at the time, and I'd never backed down from what I originally said, is that I don't think Scott Frost deserved a fifth year. I know they're 3-9, the best 3-9 team of all time. Whatever. That's a silly statement, and I just thought that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just thought that kind of run its course. He gets a whole nother year, another opportunity, and now years later is talking down that AD, or seemingly right, talking down that AD. Like, if you want the AD on your side, don't go 3-9. That would be my first in that UCF athletic director. It won't be on your side if you continue to go 3-9 either.
I agree with everything you said. So first of all, let's put it out there. There is a slim chance he's not talking about Trev Alberts. I don't know who in the blue hell else he would be talking about, so I could be wrong. But it seems like he's talking about Trev Alberts. But let's acknowledge the very slim possibility that Scott Frost did not just call out Trev Alberts without using his name. So there's a couple things that play into this. Greg Austin, my former teammate at Nebraska, former offensive line coach here at Nebraska. They had a former players practice every spring, every fall. The Scott was the head coach. The first spring, the first former players are all officially invited back to practice before Scott Frost's first spring game, before his first fall as a head coach. After that practice, all the former players are upstairs. We're eating. They've got food. I'm sitting at the same table as a offensive line recruit, and right next to offensive line coach at the time, Greg Austin. And Greg and I chatted. You got to keep in mind, at that time, the AD was Bill Moose. Greg literally said, everything that Frost has asked for, Bill has given him. And I was like, everything? He's like, everything. I'm like, everything. He's like, every single thing he has given to him. So he must not be talking about Bill Moose, and he didn't seem to be short a whole lot of things when Bill Moose was the AD. So I assume he's talking about Trev. Now, I have had people tell me that there was at least one instance where Trev and Scott may or may not have been nose to nose discussing things with elevated volume in their voices. So I think Trev came in, and he was brought in because it was time, and I hope to interview Bill Moose here in the near future. He has a book that came out. I'm going to reach out at some point, and I want to bring him on and interview him. The Husker Online guys did a phenomenal job interviewing him. Okay. But I think everyone kind of recognized, hey, Bill did a great job. Trev's the next guy, at least for now. And obviously, we have a new AD that I said yesterday I think is doing a really good job. But I kind of felt like Trev was almost brought in because he could hold Scott accountable, and he could do what was necessary if the unfortunate time came that he needed to do what was necessary, and unfortunately that time did come. I think what bothers me about this is I think he probably got everything he wanted at UCF. Scott has told me in a post-spring game discussion in the weight room, and I quote, I did whatever the hell I wanted to at UCF, end quote. In other words, he had free reign at UCF. When he first got here, Greg Austin told me Bill Moose gave Scott everything he asked for. Trev was probably brought in because he was the right guy at the time, and he was a guy who could hold Scott accountable when Scott was off to a very rough start here at his tenure at the University of Nebraska. And I think maybe Frost wasn't used to that. And there was obviously some disagreements and things along the line. I think what bothers me the most about this, and if you watched on YouTube, as soon as we started playing the clip that I already heard, I don't want to say I checked out. I don't know. I can't listen to him blame other people anymore. I'm so tired of when he first got here, these aren't my players. And then it's this, and then it's that. And now here he is halfway across the country taking shots at a guy who's halfway across the country and not even at Nebraska anymore. And again, there's a slim chance he's not talking about Trev. It's not very high, but I will acknowledge it exists. All right. For me, I'm just like, oh my good Lord. At some point, if you own a mirror, could you just look at it? Like, just look at it. If I'm a UCF fan, I am elated that Scott Frost is back in Orlando. And then I hear these comments and I'm terrified because I'm like, crap. Has he not learned anything? Because they're not in the AAC anymore. Now, the Big 12, we're not going to pretend they're they're Power 4. We're going to pretend that facade for now. But they're not one of the Power 2, because I always say there's a Power 2, there's a next 2, and then everybody else. The Big 12 is a little bit different. It's a much more balanced league. It's not top heavy. There's not going to be a bunch of elite teams at the top, but it's a very balanced league. I find it the most entertaining league to watch because anybody can beat anybody on just about any given day in that league. There's going to be a lot of tough, close games. Scott Frost does not have the best history and record in tough, close games, something Nebraska is trying to come out of as well. But for me, the best way to get better at little things is to be honest with yourself. That's why I will say openly here the things that, with all due respect, okay, I say them respectfully, but there are things we have to get better at, and they're the simple little things. And that's how you get better and increase your chances of winning those close games. I believe Matt Rule, and we'll see how he does this year and going forward. We're obviously all rooting for him, but he has the ability. He's already shown it to look in the mirror and be honest and take accountability and make changes. If Scott Frost has not yet learned that ability, if I'm a UCF fan, I'm terrified. I'm terrified right now. Who did we just hire back? The guy that led us to an undefeated season after we couldn't win a game 2 years before that? Didn't win a game, then they went 6-7, lost their bowl game, 6-6 regular season, then they go undefeated 2 years later, as we all know. Did we get that guy? Or did we get the guy who hasn't let go of the things that are bothering him? Because apparently he's still bringing them up from halfway across the country, and the guy who doesn't own a mirror or refuses to look at it. And if I'm a UCF fan, that terrifies me. I don't want to spend a whole lot more time on this today, but I had a really hard time when I heard that. That really bothered me. Now, when this show's over today, I'm going to go on about my weekend. It's not going to bother me anymore because I will have vented, albeit very unusually calmly for me here today. But those are my thoughts. That's my initial reaction. It's eye roll. It's what the heck. It's let it go. It's look in the mirror, move on, enjoy life, improve your team, and stop talking about other people that don't have anything to do with you anymore. What are your thoughts, Jake?
Well, it's definitely interesting. It's not uncommon for coaches to be somewhat upset about stints that didn't work out, right? I think I've heard a few times Bo Pelini reference that Nebraska has not been back to the level that they were at with him. And he certainly has an argument about not having support. And I would agree with him on that side. Soldier took a long time to get back. So, I can understand still being upset. And I'd love to hear from Scott Frost why he, like, the real reason, like if you could take him off the record, why didn't it work out at Nebraska? And maybe he has some different thoughts than what we all think. But at some point, like you said, you just got to acknowledge that it didn't work. Move on to the next thing, hopefully learn from those losses instead of just begrudging them and making it better for his spot at UCF. Like you said, I'd be a little bit concerned that might not have been the case. Still kind of looking maybe for some blame as to why it didn't work at Nebraska. You're the head coach, man. It falls on you.
That's the keyest statement anybody said right there. At the end of the day, it falls at the foot of the head coach. The buck stops with you. Whether I'm helping coach high school teams, or I'm coaching kids teams, or I'm analyzing college and NFL or pro teams, you never stay the same. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Whatever you're doing, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And if you have the inability to self-analyze and be honest with yourself, you're going to get worse because you won't stay the same and you're not allowing yourself to get better. And that's what I think would scare me if I'm a UCF fan. And, I've been to speaking gigs where people have asked me about Frost, and I've had people blurt out, F this, F that. It's hard to say. I don't get excited about it, but I'm genuinely curious to see what happens, but I am rooting for him. Now, admittedly, I don't want him to go win a national title. That would probably bother me. Why didn't you do that here would be my thought. but I want him to have success, and I want him to kind of move on from things, hopefully, and find a little bit of happiness. Even the Scott Frost I met when I first got on campus, the guy who challenged me to a throwing competition years ago, he just struck me as an unhappy guy at that point in time. And unfortunately, I kind of still see that guy at times. And maybe at some point I'll share the results of that throwing competition. But anyways, the point wasn't really that. It was more or less, that was my first time ever meeting him in person. And I remember thinking to myself, this dude's like really angry about something. Now, maybe it was something completely unrelated. I mean, we're talking like 02, 03. He was still playing in the league. He was a safety. Who knows what was going on at that point in time.